Today, I want to dive into something that sounds almost unbelievable at first. How the human body can adapt to extreme conditions. This idea might surprise you because we usually think of the human body as something fragile, something that only works within a narrow comfort zone. But biology is far more flexible than that. Our bodies are constantly adjusting to temperature, oxygen levels, physical stress, and all kinds of other challenges. Sometimes those changes happen in minutes, sometimes they take years, and sometimes they shape entire populations over generations. Let's focus on mountains first. When you go up a high mountain, the air is thinner. That means there is less oxygen to breathe. Most people feel it right away. They get short of breath, their hearts beat faster, and sometimes they even get headaches or feel dizzy. Your body is working harder just to keep up, but some people live at these altitudes all the time. Populations in the Andes, the Himalayas, or the Ethiopian highlands have bodies that are naturally adapted to life where the air is thin. Their red blood cells carry oxygen more efficiently, and their lungs may be larger, letting them take in more air with each breath. Even their muscles and organs are better at using oxygen. These changes don't happen in a day. If you move to a high altitude, your body slowly adjusts over weeks. But people who are born there are adapted to it from the very beginning. That's why they can work, run, and live normally where most of us would struggle. High-altitude living shows just how flexible humans really are. With time and the right conditions, our bodies can adapt to the environments that seem impossible at first glance. And we can see this not only in people who grow up in the mountains, but also in climbers who train their bodies for years to handle thin air. One of the most famous examples is Reinhold Messner and Peter Habeler. In 1978, they reached the top of Mount Everest without using supplemental oxygen. At that altitude, the air has only about 1/3 of the oxygen we have at sea level, so most climbers rely on oxygen tanks just to function normally. Messner and Habeler spent years training at high altitudes. Their bodies gradually adapted to the thin air. Their breathing, endurance, and oxygen use became extremely efficient. When they finally summited without oxygen, it showed something remarkable. With enough time, training, and experience, the human body can go far beyond what we usually think is possible. This story is a striking example of human adaptation. But mountains are just one type of extreme environment. Let's look at another one: extreme cold. Some people train their bodies to tolerate temperatures that would normally feel unbearable. Wim Hof, often called the Iceman, is known for doing things that seem almost impossible. He has climbed snowy mountains wearing only shorts, run a marathon in the Arctic cold, and even sat in ice water for very long periods. Normally, the human body loses heat quickly in these conditions. Muscles begin to shake, body temperature drops, and in serious cases, it can become very dangerous. But Hof trained for years using breathing techniques, cold exposure, and mental focus. According to researchers who have studied him, he can influence some of the body's automatic responses, things most people cannot consciously control. For instance, laboratory experiments suggest his breathing techniques can affect the stress response and even parts of the immune system. Because of stories like this, cold exposure has become much more popular in recent years. You might have seen people taking cold plunges, sitting in ice baths, or swimming in freezing water during winter. Stories like this also raise an interesting question. If the body can adapt to thin air in the mountains and even learn to tolerate extreme cold, what about the ocean? Some people spend large parts of their lives underwater, not with diving tanks, but on a single breath. One fascinating example comes from the Bajau people, often called sea nomads. They live in the Southeast Asia and traditionally spend much of their day diving in the ocean to fish or collect shellfish. What makes them remarkable is how long they can stay underwater. Some Bajau divers can hold their breath for several minutes and dive more than 60 meters deep. For a long time, scientists thought this was simply the result of training, but when researchers studied the badger more closely, they found something surprising. Many of them have larger spleens than average. The spleen stores red blood cells. When the body dives underwater and oxygen becomes limited, it can release these extra cells into the bloodstream, helping carry more oxygen. In other words, their bodies may be naturally adapted for life in the ocean. All these examples, high mountains, icy waters, deep dives, show just how adaptable we really are. So, next time you are up against a challenge, maybe you are pushing a little harder on a run, stepping into a cold shower, or just trying something that feels outside your comfort zone. Remember, your body is capable of more than you might think.